Admiral Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the emergency alarm screamed through his ship. The sound cut through the quiet bridge like a knife. Red lights flashed everywhere. His officers jumped to their stations with fear in their eyes. "Admiral, we have an urgent message coming in from New Haven Colony," said Lieutenant Danny Walsh, his voice shaking. "It's Colony Director Lisa Carter. She sounds terrified." Morrison set down his coffee cup. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. New Haven was one of humanity's most successful colonies. 20,000 people lived there. Families who had worked for 3 generations to turn that world into a paradise. "Put her through," Morrison ordered. The main screen flickered to life. Lisa Carter's face appeared, but something was wrong. Behind her, orange flames danced across the sky. Smoke filled the air. She was bleeding from a cut on her forehead. "Admiral Morrison, thank God," Lisa said, her words coming fast. "We're under attack. Alien ships came out of nowhere. They're bombing everything, the cities, the farms, the schools. They won't answer our calls for surrender." Morrison felt ice in his veins. "How many ships, Lisa? What do they look like?" "Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. They're huge, Admiral. Black metal with red markings. They look like giant beetles with wings. They just keep firing and firing." The transmission shook as another explosion rocked the colony. Through the smoke, Morrison could see massive alien ships hovering over the burning city. Their weapons sent streams of green fire down from the sky. Buildings melted like candles. "Lisa, get everyone to the underground shelters," Morrison said. "We're sending help." Lisa shook her head. Her eyes were full of tears. "It's too late, Admiral. They're bombing the shelters too. These aliens, they don't want prisoners. They want us all dead." A child's scream echoed in the background. Morrison's hands turned into fists. He had grandchildren, the same age as that child. "Admiral," Lisa continued, "you need to warn Earth. These aliens, they call themselves the Vectari Empire. Their leader sent us a message before they started shooting. He said humanity is a disease that needs to be cleaned from the galaxy." The transmission cut to static for a moment. When it came back, Lisa was on the ground, blood ran down her face, the building around her was falling apart. "Tell my sister on Earth that I love her," Lisa whispered. "Tell everyone to fight. Don't let them do this to other colonies. Don't let them—" The screen went black. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Morrison stared at the dead screen for 10 seconds. Then he turned to his communications officer. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command, Priority Alpha. Now." While his officer worked, Morrison thought about New Haven. He had visited that colony 5 years ago. Children had run up to shake his hand. Farmers had shown him fields of golden wheat that grew under an alien sun. A young couple had asked him to marry them right there in the town square, with the whole colony watching and cheering. Now they were all dead. 20,000 people, gone in 6 hours. "Admiral, I have Earth Command," his officer said. President Helen Davis appeared on the screen. She was in the White House Situation Room. Behind her stood Fleet Admiral Ryan Burke and Defense Secretary Paul Martinez. They all looked worried. "Jake, what's the situation?" President Davis asked. Morrison kept his voice steady. "New Haven Colony has been destroyed, Madam President. Total casualties. 20,000 dead. The attackers call themselves the Vectari Empire." The president's face went pale. Admiral Burke stepped forward. "How many ships did they have?" "Lisa Carter estimated several thousand," Morrison replied. "Large vessels, heavily armed. They showed no interest in taking prisoners or negotiating. They wanted complete extermination." Defense Secretary Martinez spoke up. "Any word from other colonies in that sector?" Morrison shook his head. "We've lost contact with Haven's Rest and New Montana. I think the Vectari hit them too." President Davis closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Morrison saw something he had never seen before in 20 years of service. The President of the United States was afraid. "Jake, I'm getting reports from our deep space monitors," Admiral Burke said. "A massive alien fleet is moving toward our core systems. We estimate over 50,000 ships." Morrison felt sick. Humanity's entire military had maybe 50,000 ships total. spread across 12 sectors. Most of them were patrol boats and cargo escorts. The Vectari were bringing a real war fleet. "There's more," President Davis said quietly. 10 minutes. After New Haven went silent, we received a transmission. It was broadcast to every human world at the same time. She nodded to her aide, who activated another screen. An alien face appeared. It looked like a cross between a lizard and an insect. Yellow eyes burned with hatred. Sharp teeth filled its mouth. "I am War Prince Thekatar of the Vectari Empire," the alien said in perfect English. "Your species has spread across our galaxy like a plague. You build your colonies on worlds that belong to superior races. You multiply like insects and consume everything you touch." The alien's voice was cold and proud. "The Vectari Empire has conquered 47 species in the past century. We have burned 1,000 worlds clean of inferior life. Now it is humanity's turn." Morrison watched the alien's yellow eyes. There was no mercy there, no doubt, only the certainty of a predator looking at prey. "You have 24 hours to surrender all your colonies," Thektar continued. "Your people will become slaves in our mines and factories. Those who resist will die. Those who comply will live to serve their betters. This is the only choice you will receive." The transmission ended. The Situation Room was quiet for a long moment. "How long do we have?" President Davis asked. Admiral Burke checked his tablet. "Their main fleet will reach our outer colonies in 18 hours, Earth itself in maybe 3 days. "What are our options?" the President asked. "Limited," Burke admitted. "We could evacuate some colonies, but not all of them. And even if we pulled back all our ships to defend Earth, we'd be outnumbered 4-1. Morrison felt anger burning in his chest. The Vectari thought humanity would just roll over and die. They thought humans were weak because they tried to solve problems with words instead of weapons. "There is one option," Morrison said quietly. Everyone looked at him. He had never spoken about this to anyone except the 3 other people who knew. "The secret. The Ghost Fleet Protocol," Morrison continued. Admiral Burke's eyes went wide. "Jake, that's classified beyond top secret." "What's the Ghost Fleet Protocol?" President Davis asked. Morrison took a deep breath. "For 50 years, every time we decommissioned a warship, we didn't scrap it. We mothballed it in hidden shipyards throughout the Outer Rim. Automated systems have been maintaining and upgrading them, waiting for a crisis that would justify their activation." The room went silent. Defense Secretary Martinez leaned forward. "How many ships are we talking about?" 700,000, Morrison said. President Davis stared at him. 700,000 warships? That's impossible. "Not active warships," Morrison explained. "Mothballed vessels with skeleton automated systems. They would need crews, supplies, and time to fully activate. But yes, Madam President, 700,000 ships." Admiral Burke was already pulling up files on his secure tablet. "The USS Constitution, USS Lexington, USS Enterprise. My God, Jake. These are ships from the expansion wars. Some of them are 70 years old. Old but functional," Morrison said. "And they're big, most modern. Ships are built for speed and efficiency. These were built to fight wars." President Davis stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful White House lawn. Children were playing in a nearby park. They had no idea that aliens wanted to kill them all. "How long would it take to activate this ghost fleet?" she asked. 48 hours minimum, Morrison replied. 72 hours to be safe. We'd need to recall every available pilot, engineer, and soldier from across human space." The President turned around. Her face was hard now. The fear was gone, replaced by determination. "The Vectari Empire has conquered 47 species," she said. "They've burned 1,000 worlds. They think humanity will be number 48. She walked back to her desk and picked up a pen. They're about to learn why that's a mistake. President Davis signed the emergency order as alarms began blaring across every human world. "Activate the Ghost Fleet. Bring them all home." Captain Danny Rodriguez had never seen anything like it in his 20 years of service. His shuttle flew between rows of massive warships that stretched beyond the horizon. Each ship was as long as a city block and as tall as a skyscraper. They hung in space like sleeping giants, dark and silent. "My God," whispered his co-pilot, Lieutenant Amy Chen. How many are there? The computer says 12,000 in this shipyard alone, Rodriguez replied. And there are 57 more shipyards just like this one scattered across the outer rim. Shipyard Sigma 7 had been hidden in an asteroid field for 40 years. From the outside, it looked like any other mining operation. But inside the hollow, asteroids, humanity had built the largest secret military base in the galaxy. Rodriguez's shuttle docked with the command station. As he stepped out, he saw Chief Engineer Maria Santos running toward him with a tablet in her hands. "Captain, we have a problem," Maria said, breathing hard. "These ships have been in storage for decades. Some of them haven't had their engines fired up since before I was born." Rodriguez nodded. He had expected this. "What's our timeline?" The automated systems kept the ships in good condition, but bringing them fully online is a different story. Each battleship needs at least 6 hours of startup procedures. The really old ones might need 12 hours. They walked through the command center together. Hundreds of technicians were working at computer stations, remotely activating ships throughout the shipyard. On the main screen, Rodriguez could see the first vessels beginning to power up. Their running lights flickered on like stars being born. "What about crews?" Rodriguez asked. "That's the bigger problem," Maria admitted. "Each battleship needs a crew of 800. The smaller cruisers need 300 each. We're talking about millions of people, and most of them are civilians. Now," Rodriguez looked at the list of ships on Maria's tablet. The names made his heart race. USS Constitution, USS Lexington, USS Enterprise, USS Missouri. These weren't just ships. They were legends, vessels that had carried humanity to the stars and fought in wars that most people had forgotten. "The Constitution," Rodriguez said quietly. "I thought she was destroyed in the Battle of Kepler Station." "Officially she was," Maria replied. "But the Navy had her secretly repaired and upgraded. She's been waiting here for 30 years. A communication alert interrupted them. The main screen showed Admiral Morrison calling from Earth Command. "Captain Rodriguez, what's your status?" Morrison asked. 12,000 ships in various stages of activation, Admiral. We'll have the first wave ready in 8 hours. The full shipyard operational in 24 hours. "Good. I'm sending you." "The crew assignments. You're getting some interesting company," Rodriguez frowned. "Sir? We're recalling every veteran, every retired officer, and every civilian with military training. Some of these people haven't flown a warship in 20 years, but they're all we have." The screen changed to show incoming shuttle traffic. Hundreds of small ships were approaching the shipyard from all directions. Rodriguez watched them dock at various stations throughout the facility. An hour later, Rodriguez stood in the main hangar as the new crews arrived. The first person off the shuttle was a woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes. She wore an old uniform that had been taken out of storage. "Captain Betty Williams reporting for duty," she said with a crisp salute. Rodriguez stared at her. Every officer in the fleet knew that name. Betty Williams had commanded the USS Yorktown during the Centauri campaign. She had won 3 major battles before retiring to a farming colony 15 years ago. "Captain Williams, it's an honor," Rodriguez said. "But aren't you supposed to be growing vegetables on New Texas?" Williams smiled grimly. "I was. Then I heard about New Haven. Then I heard we were bringing back the old ships." She looked toward the hangar where massive battleships waited. "The Yorktown is out there, isn't she?" "Bay 47, Rodriguez confirmed. "Then that's where I belong." More veterans arrived over the next few hours. Captain John Mitchell, who had fought pirates in the outer colonies. Commander Lisa Park, who had led the defense of Mining Station Alpha. Major Tom Brady, a Marine who had stormed enemy positions on 6 different worlds. But they also got civilians. Cargo ship pilots who had never fired a weapon in anger. Mining engineers who knew how to fix engines but had never served on a warship. Even some colonists who had basic flight training and volunteered when they heard about the Vectari threat. Rodriguez watched a young woman named Katie Bell try to figure out the weapons controls on a battleship bridge. She was a freight pilot from Earth who had volunteered for combat duty. Her hands shook as she studied the targeting system. It's not that different from a cargo hauler, Rodriguez told her gently. The principles are the same. You just have more buttons. I've never shot at anything that could shoot back, Katie admitted. None of us had the first time, Rodriguez replied. You'll learn. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other shipyards were coming to life. At Facility Omega 12, 5,000 heavy cruisers powered up their fusion reactors for the first time in decades. At Base Charlie 9, ancient dreadnoughts that had fought in humanity's first interstellar war began running system checks. Lieutenant Commander Steve Johnson coordinated the massive operation from his post at Fleet Command. His job was to make sure every shipyard got the crews and supplies they needed. It was like organizing 50 different military bases at the same time. Sir, we have a problem at Shipyard Delta 3, reported his aide, Ensign Mark Torres. They have ships but no experienced officers. Most of their crews are mining engineers and cargo pilots. Johnson looked at his deployment charts. Send them, Captain Rodriguez when he's finished at Sigma 7, and transfer some of the veteran officers from the core world's shipyards. What about supplies? Torres asked. These old ships use different ammunition and fuel than our modern fleet. The automated manufacturing systems have been producing supplies for 40 years, Johnson replied. Each shipyard has enough ammunition and fuel for a 6-month campaign. As Johnson worked, reports came in from across human space. The Vectari Empire was moving toward Earth's colonies, but they were moving slowly. Their massive fleet was having trouble coordinating so many ships. That gave humanity time to prepare. On the farming world of New Texas, retired Admiral Frank Cooper received his activation orders while milking cows. He read the message twice, then walked to his barn and opened a hidden compartment. Inside was his old uniform and a small metal box containing his service medals. 40 years, he said to himself. 40 years of peace, and now this. But as he put on the uniform, Cooper felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Purpose. The Vectari had made a mistake when they attacked New Haven. They had awakened something that had been sleeping for too long. Back at Shipyard Sigma 7, the first fully activated battleship prepared to leave dock. The USS Constitution stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern. Her hull was dark gray metal scarred by decades of battles. Her weapons bristled from armored turrets. Her engines glowed blue-white with contained nuclear fire. Captain Williams stood on the Constitution's bridge, running her hands over controls she remembered from her youth. The ship felt different now, heavier, more dangerous. The automated systems had upgraded her weapons and armor while she slept. All stations report ready, her executive officer announced. Williams nodded. Around the shipyard, other battleships were beginning to move. The USS Lexington, the USS Enterprise, the USS Missouri. Ships that had been legends were becoming reality again. Take us out, Williams ordered. The Constitution's engines rumbled to life. The massive ship moved away from the dock with surprising grace. As she cleared the shipyard, her sensors detected hundreds of other ships joining the formation. Captain Rodriguez watched from the command station as his 12,000 ships formed up in space. They moved in perfect formation, their running lights creating a constellation of human determination. Signal from Fleet Command, his communications officer announced. All Ghost Fleet units are to rendezvous at Rally Point Omega. Rodriguez smiled. Rally Point Omega was coordinates in deep space where no alien had ever traveled. It was where humanity would gather its strength and plan its revenge. Send a reply, Rodriguez ordered. Sigma 7 fleet departing for Rally Point Omega. 12,000 ships and crews ready for battle. As the massive fleet entered hyperspace, Rodriguez thought about the Vectari. They had conquered 47 species and burned 1,000 worlds. They thought humanity would be easy prey. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and watched 700,000 human warships arrange themselves in formation. The sight took his breath away. Ships stretched in every direction as far as his eyes could see. The running lights looked like a galaxy of stars that had come to life. The Defiance was a massive dreadnought that everyone thought had been destroyed 30 years ago in the Centauri campaign. But like all the Ghost Fleet ships, She had been secretly repaired and hidden away. Now she served as Morrison's flagship for the largest military force humanity had ever assembled. "Admiral, all fleet commanders are ready for your briefing," said Commander Amy Torres, his second in command. She was young but smart, and Morrison trusted her judgment. Morrison activated the fleet-wide communication system. On screens throughout 700,000 ships, human faces looked back at him. Veterans with gray hair and young civilians who had never seen combat, all of them ready to fight. "Officers and crew of the Ghost Fleet," Morrison began. 3 days ago, the Vectari Empire murdered 20,000 innocent people on New Haven Colony. They think this makes them strong. They think it makes us afraid. He paused and looked directly into the camera. "They're wrong," Morrison continued. "The Vectari expect us to wait for them to attack Earth. They expect us to huddle behind our defenses and hope for mercy. Instead, we're going to hunt them down across the galaxy. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten human children." The plan was simple but dangerous. The Ghost Fleet would split into dozens of smaller forces. Each group would attack different Vectari targets at the same time. Supply depots, communication stations, isolated battle groups. The goal was to make the enemy afraid to travel anywhere without massive protection. Captain Danny Rodriguez received his orders an hour later. He would lead Strike Force Alpha against a Vectari fuel depot at Kepler 442. The target was defended by maybe 200 enemy ships. Rodriguez was bringing 8,000 battleships. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" asked his weapons officer, Lieutenant Sam Parker. 8,000 ships seems like too many for one fuel depot." Rodriguez smiled grimly. "The Vectari have been conquering other species for 200 years. They've never faced an enemy that could match their numbers. We're going to teach them fear." Strike Force Alpha jumped to hyperspace 6 hours later. The journey to Kepler 442 took 14 hours. During the trip, Rodriguez studied intelligence reports about the target. The fuel depot supplied Vectari fleets in 3 different sectors. Losing it would force enemy ships to travel much farther for supplies. More importantly, it would send a message that nowhere in Vectari space was safe. "Dropping out of hyperspace in 30 seconds, announced his navigation officer. Rodriguez felt his heart beat faster. This would be his first real battle as a fleet commander. "All ships, prepare for combat." The human fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. 8,000 warships appeared at once, their weapons already charging. The Vectari defenders had been expecting maybe a dozen human raiders. Instead, they faced an armada. "Enemy ships are trying to run," reported the sensor officer. "Some are heading for the depot's defense stations. Don't let any escape," Rodriguez ordered. "Target their engines first. I want prisoners who can spread the word about what happened here." The battle lasted 7 minutes. Vectari ships exploded under streams of human weapons fire. Their defense stations crumbled as battleships poured missile after missile into their armor. The fuel depot itself disappeared in a fireball that could be seen from 3 light-years away. Rodriguez watched the destruction with satisfaction, but he also felt sad. War was ugly, even when you were winning. "Signal the fleet. We jump to hyperspace in 5 minutes. Don't give their reinforcements time to arrive." As Strike Force Alpha vanished into hyperspace, similar attacks were happening across Vectari space. Captain Betty Williams led 4,000 ships against a communication array that connected 12 enemy systems. The array was destroyed so completely that Vectari commanders lost contact with half their fleets. Commander Lisa Park took 3,000 ships and attacked a Vectari supply convoy. The enemy expected pirates or raiders. Instead, they found themselves facing humanity's newest heavy cruisers. The convoy was wiped out in minutes. War Prince Thektar received the first reports while reviewing invasion plans aboard his flagship, the Bloodclaw. His aide, Sub-Commander Vextar, entered his private chambers with obvious fear. "My prince, we have received disturbing news from our outer territories," Vextar said, keeping his eyes on the floor. "Speak," Thektar ordered. 17 of our installations have been attacked in the past 6 hours. The humans are not defending their worlds, they are hunting our fleets." Thektar's yellow eyes narrowed. How many human ships are we talking about? A few dozen raiders? No, my prince. Our surviving commanders report thousands of human vessels in each attack. One fuel depot was attacked by 8,000 ships. Thektar stood up quickly. That's impossible. Human intelligence says they have 50,000 ships total. The reports are confirmed, my prince. Somehow the humans have assembled a massive fleet, much larger than we expected. For the first time in his life, Thektar felt something he had never experienced before. Uncertainty. The Vektari Empire had conquered 47 species by overwhelming them with superior numbers. No enemy had ever matched their fleet strength. How many ships do the humans have? He asked quietly. Unknown, my prince, but our intelligence officers estimate at least 300,000, maybe more. Thektar walked to his window and looked out at his own fleet. 1 million Vektari warships surrounded his flagship, the largest military force in galactic history. It should have been enough to crush any enemy. But if the humans really had hundreds of thousands of ships, this war would be much harder than expected. Meanwhile, Captain Rodriguez was leading Strike Force Alpha toward their second target, a Vektari mining operation that produced rare metals for ship construction. The facility was lightly defended because it was deep in Vektari territory. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the mining station, reported his communications officer. They're trying to surrender. Rodriguez thought about New Haven Colony, about 20,000 dead civilians, about children who had been murdered for no reason except that they were human. Tell them we accept their surrender, Rodriguez said. But the mining equipment gets destroyed. We're not here to take prisoners. We're here to cripple their war machine. The mining station was demolished with surgical precision. The Vektari workers were loaded onto cargo ships and sent toward the nearest enemy base. They would carry the message that humanity was not interested in conquest, only in making the Vektari pay for their crimes. As news of the attacks spread, something unexpected began to happen throughout Vektari space. The subject species that the Empire had conquered started to rebel. On 47 different worlds, slaves and servants began to fight back against their masters. The Kalari, a peaceful species that had been enslaved for 60 years, destroyed 3 Vektari shipyards before their uprising was crushed. The Zenthi, who had been forced to work in Vektari factories, sabotaged weapons production across 6 systems. For the first time in 2 centuries, the Vektari Empire was fighting wars on multiple fronts. Their fleets had to be diverted from the invasion of human space to put down rebellions at home. War Prince Thektar received these reports with growing rage. His empire was built on the fear of conquered species. If that fear disappeared, everything would collapse. My prince, Sub-Commander Vextar said carefully, perhaps we should negotiate with the humans. Offer them a peace treaty. Thektar's hand moved to his weapon. The Vektari Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. We will crush these human rebels and make examples of them. But privately, Thektar was worried. The humans were not fighting like any enemy he had faced before. They were not trying to defend territory or protect resources. They were conducting a campaign of pure revenge, and they seemed to have unlimited ships to do it with. Captain Rodriguez received new orders as Strike Force Alpha prepared for their 3rd mission. Admiral Morrison wanted all human forces to broadcast a message to every Vektari ship they encountered. Rodriguez activated the wideband transmitter and spoke into the microphone. This is Captain Rodriguez of the Human Defense Force. This message is for every Vektari warrior listening. He paused, thinking about the children of New Haven. You wanted to see what happens when you threaten humanity's children. You wanted to know how we respond to genocide. Now you know. The message was broadcast on every frequency the Vektari used. Within hours, it was being repeated across their entire empire. Human ships were not just attacking Vektari targets. They were making sure every alien in the galaxy understood why. As Strike Force Alpha jumped to hyperspace for their next mission, Rodriguez looked at the tactical display. Dozens of other human fleets were conducting similar operations across hundreds of light years. The Vektari Empire was being systematically hunted and destroyed. Sir, asked Lieutenant Parker, how long do we keep this up? Rodriguez thought about War Prince Thektar's ultimatum, 24 hours to surrender or face extinction. War Prince Thektar stood on the bridge of his flagship Bloodclaw and watched the largest defensive fleet in galactic history take position around his home system. 1 million Vektari warships formed protective rings around the planet Krithmar. Each of the system's 12 moons had been turned into a fortress bristling with planet-killer weapons. "My prince, our outer sensors detect human ships approaching," reported Sub-Commander Vextar. "Long-range scans show approximately 400,000 vessels." Thektar nodded grimly. 3 months of constant human attacks had cost him dearly. The Ghost Fleet had destroyed supply lines, communication networks, and isolated battle groups across his empire. Rebellions burned on conquered worlds. His once mighty empire was crumbling. But here, at Krithmar, he would make his final stand. The humans wanted a battle. He would give them one they would never forget. "Activate all moon fortresses," Thektar ordered. "Charge the superweapons. If we cannot win this war, we will at least take the human homeworlds with us when we die." The superweapons were Thektar's final card. Massive devices built into each fortress moon, capable of destroying entire star systems. If the battle went badly, he would use them to sterilize every human colony simultaneously. The humans would win, but their species would die with him. Admiral Jake Morrison studied the tactical display aboard the USS Defiance. The Vektari defensive position was stronger than anything humanity had ever faced. 12 fortress moons. 1 million enemy ships, weapons that could crack planets in half. "Admiral, our scouts report the fortress moons are charging some kind of superweapon," said Commander Amy Torres. "If those things are what I think they are, they could target Earth and our colonies from here." Morrison felt ice in his stomach. The Vektari were planning a scorched Earth strategy. Even if humanity won this battle, they might lose their entire civilization in the process. "We need to end this fast," Morrison said, "before Thektar can use those weapons." The battle plan was the most complex operation in human military history. 3 separate strike forces would attack different targets simultaneously. Captain Torres would lead Strike Force Bravo against the outer fortress moons to draw enemy attention. Captain Betty Williams would command Strike Force Charlie, targeting the superweapon installations. Morrison himself would take the main fleet directly at Thektar's flagship. "All commanders, this is Admiral Morrison," he broadcast to the Ghost Fleet. "Today we end this war. Today we show the galaxy that humanity protects its own. For New Haven. For our children. For the future of our species." 400,000 human ships began their final advance. The Battle of Krithmar was about to begin. Captain Torres led Strike Force Bravo toward the outer fortress moons. 50,000 human battleships faced defensive positions that had never been broken in 200 years of Vektari expansion. "All ships concentrate fire on Fortress Moon 1, Torres ordered. "We need to punch through their defenses fast." The Fortress Moon was a sphere of metal and rock 30 kilometers across. Weapons turrets covered its surface like spines on a sea urchin. As the human ships approached, streams of green energy lanced out from the fortress. The USS Saratoga took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of superheated gas. The USS Constellation lost her forward section, but kept fighting. Human ships pressed forward through a storm of enemy fire, their hulls glowing red-hot from the heat of repeated impacts. "Torpedo bombers, make your runs," Torres commanded. Small human fighters dove through the defensive fire carrying massive torpedoes designed to crack fortress armor. Many were destroyed before reaching their targets, but enough got through. Explosions flowered across the fortress moon's surface as human weapons found their marks. Meanwhile, Captain Williams led Strike Force Charlie on a desperate mission to destroy the superweapons before they could fire. Her target was Fortress Moon 7, which housed the primary control system for all 12 superweapons. "This is it, people," Williams announced to her fleet. "If we fail here, Earth dies. I don't care what it costs. That Fortress Moon has to be destroyed." Williams commanded 30,000 ships, including many of the oldest vessels in the Ghost Fleet. The USS Constitution, USS Lexington, USS Enterprise. Ships that had fought humanity's first interstellar wars now faced their greatest challenge. Captain Danny Rodriguez was part of Williams's force, commanding a battleship group that included several damaged vessels from previous battles. His own ship, the USS Defiant, had lost half her armor in a fight with Victari cruisers the week before. "Captain, our life support is failing," reported his engineering officer. "We're losing atmosphere on decks 7 through 12. Rodriguez looked at the fortress moon ahead of them. Its superweapon was almost fully charged. In minutes, it would be ready to fire at Earth. "All ships ramming speed," Rodriguez ordered. "Sir, that's suicide," his weapons officer protested. "Maybe," Rodriguez replied. "But Earth's children are counting on us." The human ships accelerated toward Fortress Moon 7. Victari, defensive. Fire tore into their ranks, destroying dozens of vessels every minute. But the survivors kept coming, their engines burning at maximum power. Rodriguez watched his friends die around him. The USS Yorktown exploded when her reactor was hit. The USS Intrepid broke in half, but her forward section continued the charge. Captain Williams herself led the final assault, her ancient battleship Constitution diving straight toward the fortress's main weapon. "For humanity!" Williams shouted over the communications channel. The Constitution struck the fortress moon like a missile. Her fusion reactors detonated on impact, creating a miniature star that lit up the entire battle. The explosion cracked the moon in half and destroyed the superweapon control center. Rodriguez felt tears on his face as he watched his old commander die. But there was no time to mourn. Other fortress moons still had their weapons charging. "All remaining ships continue the attack," he ordered. "Make her sacrifice count." At the center of the battle, Admiral Morrison led the main fleet toward War Prince Thektar's flagship. The Bloodclaw was a massive dreadnought surrounded by the elite of the Victari Navy. Getting to it would require punching through hundreds of thousands of enemy ships. "Admiral, the Victari are forming a defensive wall," reported his tactical officer. "They're trying to protect their flagship." Morrison smiled grimly. "Then we'll go through them." The human main fleet was 200,000 ships strong. Veterans of 3 months of constant warfare, they had learned to fight as a single massive organism. They moved in perfect coordination, each ship covering its neighbors, working together to overwhelm enemy positions. The space around Kreethmar became a storm of energy weapons and exploding ships. Human vessels traded shots with Victari dreadnoughts at point-blank range. Fighters swarmed between the larger ships, hunting for weak points in enemy armor. Slowly, inexorably, the human fleet fought its way toward the Bloodclaw. Morrison watched his ships die one by one, each sacrifice bringing them closer to their target. The USS Monitor rammed a Victari cruiser. The USS Gettysburg exploded, protecting a damaged friendly ship. Finally, Morrison's remaining ships surrounded the Bloodclaw. The massive Victari flagship was trapped, cut off from its escorts. "This is Admiral Morrison to War Prince Thektar," Morrison broadcast on an open channel. "Your empire is finished. Your fleets are destroyed. Surrender now, and I will spare your crew." Thektar's reptilian face appeared on Morrison's screen. The alien prince looked older somehow, as if the weight of defeat had aged him years in hours. "You think you have won, human," Thektar said. "But the Victari do not surrender. We are warriors. We die with honor." "Then die," Morrison replied. "But your crew doesn't have to die with you." Thektar's eyes burned with hatred. "By the laws of my people, I challenge you to single combat. Winner takes all. If I win, the humans become slaves of the Empire. If you win, the Victari submit to human rule." Morrison thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "I accept. But we fight by human rules. Hand-to-hand combat. No weapons, no armor. Just 2 warriors settling this." "Agreed," Thektar replied. "Come aboard my ship. We end this now." Morrison turned to Commander Torres. "Amy, you have command of the fleet. If I don't make it back, finish what we started." Torres saluted. "Understood, Admiral. Good luck." Morrison took a shuttle to the Bloodclaw. The alien ship was massive and dark, built for intimidation as much as warfare. Vectari warriors lined the corridors as he walked to the combat arena, their yellow eyes filled with hate. The arena was a circular room with metal walls and a sandy floor. War Prince Thektar waited in the center. He was bigger than Morrison, with muscles like steel cables and claws that could tear through armor. He had been bred for war since birth, but Morrison had something the alien prince didn't understand. He fought with the fury of every human child who had died on New Haven. He fought with the desperation of a species facing extinction. He fought with the knowledge that if he failed, humanity would be enslaved forever. The combat was brutal and quick. Thektar was stronger and faster, but Morrison was smarter and more determined. When the alien prince made a mistake, leaving himself open for just a moment, Morrison struck with everything he had. Thektar fell to the arena floor and did not get up again. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of New Haven Station and watched the sunrise over the world where the war had begun. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Kreethmar, and the planet below looked different now. Green fields covered the land where cities had once burned. New buildings rose from the ashes of the old ones. But this time, the colonists were not alone. Orbital defense platforms hung in space around the planet like protective guardians. Some had been built from scratch. Others were former Vectari fortress stations, their weapons now pointed outward to defend instead of destroy. "The morning reports, Admiral," said his aide, Lieutenant Sarah Collins. She handed him a tablet with updates from across human space. Morrison scanned the information with satisfaction. Construction was ahead of schedule on 12 colony worlds. The new defense fleet was training smoothly. Most importantly, there had been no major conflicts in the past month. "Any word from the integration program?" Morrison asked. "Captain Rodriguez reports good progress, sir. The former Vectari soldiers are adapting well to their new roles as peacekeepers." Morrison nodded. Danny Rodriguez had been promoted after the war and given one of the most difficult jobs in human space. He was responsible for turning enemy warriors into allies. It was not easy work, but Rodriguez was the right man for it. On the former Vectari homeworld of Kreethmar, Rodriguez stood in a classroom watching 30 young Vectari learn about human law enforcement. These aliens had been raised to conquer and destroy. Now they were studying how to protect and serve. "Remember," Rodriguez told his students, "your job is not to rule the species you protect. Your job is to help them solve their problems peacefully." One of the Vectari, a female named Sectra, raised her hand. "But what if they do not want our help? What if they see us as invaders?" Rodriguez smiled. It was a good question. "Then you prove them wrong. Not with words, but with actions. You show them that you are there to help, not to harm." The transformation of Vectari society was slow but steady. The warrior culture that had conquered 47 species was learning to build instead of destroy. Former soldiers became engineers, teachers, and doctors. It would take generations, but change was possible. Meanwhile, on Earth, President Helen Davis stood before the Human Congress to deliver her annual address. Behind her hung a new flag showing the symbol of the Terran Federation. It represented not just humanity, but all the species that had joined them as equals. "1 year ago, we faced extinction," President Davis said to the assembled representatives. "The Vectari Empire wanted to wipe humanity from the galaxy. Instead, we showed them something they had never seen before. We showed them mercy." The audience applauded. In the gallery sat delegates from 47 different species, former slaves and subjects of the Vectari Empire, who were now free citizens of the Federation. "Today our children play with alien children in schools across the galaxy," Davis continued. "Former enemies work together to explore new worlds and solve old problems. We have proven that strength comes not from conquest, but from unity." Captain Betty Williams would have been proud to see this moment, but she had not lived to witness the peace she helped create. Her name was carved on the memorial wall along with hundreds of thousands of others who had given their lives for humanity's future. On New Haven, near the rebuilt capital city, stood the Ghost Fleet Memorial. It was a black wall stretching for miles, inscribed with the names of every ship and every person who had served in humanity's darkest hour. Visitors came from across the galaxy to pay their respects. Former Captain Williams was buried in a simple grave overlooking the memorial. Her headstone bore the inscription she had requested. She brought us home when the stars grew dark. But not everyone who fought in the war had died. Captain Rodriguez walked through the memorial gardens with his daughter, explaining the meaning of the different monuments. She was 8 years old and had been born after the war ended. To her, peace with aliens was normal. "Daddy, why did the bad aliens want to hurt people?" she asked. Rodriguez thought carefully about his answer. "Because they were afraid, sweetheart. They thought that being strong meant making others weak. They didn't understand that real strength comes from helping others become strong too." They stopped at a small monument dedicated to the civilian volunteers who had crewed the Ghost Fleet. Many had been farmers, miners, and cargo pilots who had never expected to fight a war, but when humanity needed them, they had answered the call. Admiral Morrison visited the memorial often. Today he came to see the name of Captain Williams carved into the black stone. He placed a small bouquet of flowers from New Haven at the base of her section. "We did it, Betty," he said quietly. "The galaxy is at peace. Your sacrifice meant something." Morrison had been offered retirement many times since the war ended, but he always declined. The new Terran Federation needed experienced leadership, and there was still work to do. The galaxy was a big place, and not all of its inhabitants were friendly. Recently, long-range exploration ships had detected signs of another alien civilization at the edge of known space. Early reports suggested they might be even larger than the Vectari Empire had been. Some politicians worried about another war. Morrison was not worried. Humanity had learned important lessons from the Vectari conflict. They had built a strong defense fleet, but more importantly, they had built strong alliances. If another threat emerged, they would not face it alone. On the outer rim, exploration ships continued pushing into unknown space. Captain Lisa Park, a veteran of the Ghost Fleet, commanded one such vessel. Her mission was to make contact with new species and invite them to join the Federation peacefully. "Captain, we're detecting a distress signal," reported her communications officer. "Unknown ship appears to be disabled." Park studied the sensor readings. The ship was clearly alien, but its design was unlike anything in Federation databases. "Take us closer. Prepare a rescue team." The disabled vessel belonged to a species called the Thylorians. They were peaceful traders whose ship had suffered engine failure while fleeing from something they called the Devourers. As Park's crew helped repair their vessel, the alien captain shared troubling news. "The Devourers consume entire star systems," the Thylorian explained through a translation device. "They have destroyed 3 civilizations in our region of space. We are the last survivors of our people." Park sent an immediate report to Federation Command. If this new threat was real, the galaxy might need the Terran Federation's protection. Once again, humanity might have to stand between civilization and destruction, but this time would be different. This time, humanity would not stand alone. The Federation now included over 200 species, each contributing their unique strengths to the common defense. The Vectari provided military expertise. The Kalari offered advanced technology. The Zenthi shared their industrial capabilities. Admiral Morrison received Park's report while reviewing fleet deployment schedules. He read it twice, then called an emergency meeting of the Federation Council. Representatives from dozens of worlds gathered virtually to discuss the new threat. "If these Devourers are real, we need to be prepared," Morrison told the council. "But we also need to remember what we learned from the Vectari War. Military strength alone is not enough. We need to offer hope and unity to the species threatened by this enemy." The council voted unanimously to authorize a new exploration and defense initiative. Ships from every Federation world would join the mission to investigate the Devourer threat and protect any refugees they encountered. As the meeting ended, Morrison looked out his window at the stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, new challenges waited, but he was not afraid. Humanity had proven that when faced with extinction, they became stronger. When threatened with destruction, they chose to protect others instead of themselves. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of hope. and as long as humans and their allies stood together, that hope would never die. The stars watched over them all, silent witnesses to the greatest truth of all, that in the face of darkness even the smallest light could illuminate the universe.